Okay, and last but certainly not least, we have Brett Gaylor, who's commissioning editor of the Mozilla Foundation. So take it away. Thanks.
Hi. So I'm a filmmaker, and I make films about the internet. This poster is from one I made called RIP, a Remix Manifesto, which really looked at how the internet was transforming copyright law and how we thought of intellectual property. I also made one called Do Not Track, which was actually an interactive documentary series that collected data about you while you were watching the film. That won a Peabody Award for really helping people understand what information they were sharing online. My day job is I work for the Mozilla Foundation. We're the nonprofit behind Firefox. And I support other media makers like myself who are examining the health of the internet. But I wanted to talk to you about a film that I made last year with my son, Rowan. So can I just get a quick show of hands? Who here uses an iPhone? And what about Android? Okay, so more of you may be familiar with Siri than are familiar with the Google Assistant, which I use. And if you use that, like my son, who loves it, you might have you ask it all kinds of questions. My son asks it, like, where is Texas? What are Lego Ninjas? We used to play with it all the time together. And one day I happened to be browsing my Google settings, and I noticed this thing on the right, which is basically a log of every single request that he or I had made of the Google Assistant, which I could play back as an audio file. So I decided to make a film with that material, and I want to show it to you.
Navigate to 4955 Highgate Road.
I started using voice commands about a year ago on my phone. I'd use the voice feature to try and find any of the stuff I'd normally Google.
What is the weather in San Francisco?
It's 14 degrees and partly cloudy in San Francisco.
What is a warlock?
Sure, pictures of a warlock.
What is the world's longest burp?
My family started using it too.
Google now, what is my belly button?
Is wood ash good for all rooting plants?
But no one in the family used it more than my 5-year-old son, Rowan.
What is an iPad?
It's Googling it. Rowan, what are other things you don't know that you don't know about? These are all different ways that you can use the Google thing.
Oh.
How do you say computer in French?
What is stupid in French?
Stupide.
Then I realized that a year of these searches had actually been saved on Google's servers. I could play back everything he'd searched for on the device.
What is blue? What is naked? What is inappropriate?
All right.
What's triangle?
Triangle, a plane figure with 3 straight sides and 3 angles.
Shaman.
There you go. Pictures of a shaman.
What is triangle?
As the year progressed, I noticed the two of them beginning to bond.
What are blue jellyfish? What is Mexico? What is dancing? What is gymnastics? What is flying? What is a bee? What is a lollipop? What is trick-or-treating? What are ninjas?
Google has been with Rowan from the start, and I get the feeling this is a lifelong relationship. Even though I know them both intimately, I can't imagine what it'll be like when they grow up. But Rowan is already asking the right questions.
What is everything?
Everything, all things, all the things of a group or class. A company machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence that allows software applications to run over technological growth, resulting in unfathomable changes to human civilization.
Google now, Google now, Google now, now.
Thank you. So most people ask me when they watch that, so like, is he still allowed to use the phone? But behind their eyes, and I'm sort of seeing some of it here, the question is this guy a terrible parent? So let's actually look at what does Google do with this data? And the answer is we don't really know, but there's some things that we do know, what's going on in these data centers. And the first is that it's used to improve search, simple search. It turns out that what we speak gets out what we're looking for much better than what we type. So those voices are used to train the algorithm of search. And it's the same with translation. Those voice searches have radically improved the Google Translate engine, the natural language processors that improve it. But then there's DeepMind, which is the leading artificial intelligence platform that Google acquired. You might be familiar with DeepMind as the technology that powers AlphaGo. I'm getting a lot of nods. DeepMind is powerful because it uses machine learning, so it can examine large data sets and then learn on its own the best way to solve a problem. And Google obviously has vast data sets that we give it, often without really understanding that those data sets are being used to train an artificial intelligence. And one of DeepMind's recent projects, here's the data set from that, is to learn how to recognize human activity. So we're familiar with facial recognition, which is what's used to recognize a person. But kinetics, what this study looked at, was how to recognize human motion. So that, this would be throwing a football, and this would be shooting a gun, and this would be dancing. They used it to study 250,000 videos that were uploaded to YouTube. So it learned to recognize things like eating cake or playing golf. But this is where it gets problematic. I downloaded this data set, which to their credit is freely available, and looked at the entry for person carrying baby. And as I looked at the entries, I saw a problem. The videos of carrying baby are only people that are women. So I put in many years of carrying babies, but what bothers me about this isn't because I want credit for that. It's because those videos are a data set that's training a machine to think that the only people who carry babies are women. And just like I didn't know that Google was storing all those recordings of Rowan, and these moms probably didn't know that they were being used as a data point to teach a machine, we just don't know in the future what this algorithm is going to be used for, what DeepMind will do next. Just like none of us knew that our likes on Facebook would teach an algorithm how to persuade people to vote for Brexit. And these algorithms are increasingly influencing the public sphere. So sort of piling on to Megan's examples here, but this is a study by ProPublica in the US that looked at algorithms being used in the justice system to do things like predict whether somebody is going to recommit a crime, to reoffend, which can shape things like parole and bail. So in this case, they looked at two people who had both committed petty crime. And the system rated as a high risk a black defendant on the right, while assessed a white defendant as a low risk. Meanwhile, the white defendant had much stronger prior offenses, as you can see, armed robbery, while the black defendant had minor offenses such as juvenile misdemeanors. And in fact, the system was wrong. It turned out that the white defendant went on to recommit a very serious crime while the black defendant did not. So the data that trained this algorithm is from a justice system that disproportionately incarcerates black people. This system isn't predicting the future, it's reinforcing some of the terrible patterns of our past. Even though we live in the future, it's really hard to predict the future. So that's what we have to think about. So the answer to that question, no, sorry kids, no Alexa, no Facebook accounts, and we're really stingy with the photos. So maybe in the future they'll be able to apply for a Facebook account. So thanks Silicon Valley, another reason to be terrified of them becoming teenagers.
I hated to cut you off. That was a fantastic film, and I think you're a wonderful parent. What do I know? But that seemed I was inspired. I was like, I want to live in that house. This idea of how our data is being collected and how it's being used in ways that we don't necessarily know is it brings up this issue of informed consent. Yes. And right now it currently takes this form of things that I don't read and a lot of people don't read. And so do you have any thoughts on ways that we can talking about translation? That was a brilliant translation of how you make data relevant to people's lives and insert certain ideas into their heads. But do you have any ideas of user-friendly tools that could be created for better consent?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we look at what we can do as individuals and consumers, but lately at Mozilla we've really tried to flip that script, and it's when we thought about car accidents and how to present those, we didn't ask people to install their own seatbelts. So we sort of think of it in the same way, that it's time for the manufacturers to build these systems into the products that they make. And we really think about that in terms of, as you said, consent. And so we funded a really interesting project with the Allied Media Project in Detroit that looked at a report called Building Consentful Tech, which you can Google and find. And it really followed Planned Parenthood's FRIES model for evaluating sexual encounters. So FRIES stands for, is it freely given? Is it reversible? So just because you give consent at one point, you might not give consent for other uses of your data. Is it informed? Do you understand the full use of how your data is being used? Is it enthusiastic? So if you have to make an account to get Wi-Fi, that is not enthusiastic. And is it specific? So is it specific to that use? So we really think that the makers of technology, so whether you're engineers or funding projects, we really need to think about whether the technologies that we build and the platforms that we enter are consentful ones.
Great. And fries are delicious.
And fries are delicious.
That's also...
and it's really easy to remember.
Okay, so now I want to make sure there's time. I know we ran out last time for questions from the audience. Okay, right over here. Yes.
Hi, I'm Melissa with the Skoll Foundation, and this is a topic that I've come across a lot just in my general reading, and I'm just wondering what are kind of like the recourses I, as like a lay person, I would say, has in order to like tell the companies that are using this data that I am really frustrated that their data is biased, with that example of only women carrying babies.
Yeah, and I think that there is an element that you're seeing right now of, voting with your dollars or with your feet, and I think that is something that we're starting to see, and that's something we're really excited about at Mozilla, that there's beginning to be an ecosystem around much more healthy platforms and partners. So I think that there is an aspect that we need to start thinking about the internet as an ecosystem that we are a part of and that we can support. So choosing technology that is respectful of you, I think, is a really powerful way to do that, and there are beginning to be more and more examples of that. So I think joining some of those groups that might be a little bit uncomfortable, might be a little bit, they're not quite as cool yet as Facebook, and maybe all your friends aren't on them, but it's got to start somewhere. So I think starting to, it's almost like food. You have to kind of, sometimes you got to go to the farmer's market, sometimes you got to pay a little bit more, and I think those are some steps that we kind of need to take as individuals.
Great. Thank you for that. So, we have the 3 minutes left in the overall session, and this was a disparate panel with a lot of different perspectives and ideas. So I wanted to just bring everybody back up to stage to give a lightning answer to a question. So if you could all come, and plus you can all see them again, because Ramesh feels like a long time ago at this point, and he was wonderful, and so we need to see him again. And Mbwana, get off your phone, get up here. So bossy. I'm so bossy.
Well done.
I'm not bossy. I'm the boss. Somebody said that.
Do you have socks? Because those socks exist.
Those socks exist?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I need those socks, apparently. So, we've been talking a lot about the dark side of data, but also, of course, the light side. And we know that, these types of data technologies are here to stay. They're in business, they're in politics, they're in society. And so, and my perspective is that we have a window of opportunity right now to address some of these things that each of you have brought up in different ways. And so from your vantage point, each of you come at this from a very different perspective. What is the single most important step that you can take to advance the cause of digital data for social good? Go. 10 seconds.
On that side. For me, and this is what I was trying to get at toward the end of my few minutes speaking, is not just the inclusion, but the actual revisiting of the underlying models by which we collect and structure and calculate upon data in ways that are more open, to diverse stakeholders, right? So, in relation to your talk, am I pronouncing your name? Mbwana? Yeah, great. It's not merely the democratization of coding in Africa, it's also the underlying models by which those systems are built. That's what I was trying to get at when I was using the word ontology, right? So it's not just importing existing models from the West and training them with African data. It's also the underlying models of learning themselves. So this is central for me around this question of democratizing governance around data and learning and technology itself. So that's the big thing I'm really passionate about. Yeah.
Doug?
It's not what algorithms can do for you, it's what the person needs. And so when you're designing whatever the solution, have the people in the room who are going to be impacted by what you're working on so that you can get feedback real time on what you're building and is it going to help the human being.
Absolutely.
Great. Megan.
Infrastructure. And this is going to sound self-serving, but Jake Porway made this point this morning, so maybe if I give him credit, it's less self-serving. That there's so much work to be done right now. I mean, all of us could give so many examples of data that needs to be collected, data that needs to be analyzed differently, biased data, and there's a lot of excitement of data scientists out there who want to work on those problems, and there's not a lot of resources to actually enable that work. There's a lot of night and weekend volunteer gigs, and that's awesome. That's a great way to start, but these problems are complex, and they need a full-time commitment, so we need an infrastructure to do the work.
Agreed.
I guess be stingy, be just as careful with your digital body as you would be with your real body.
Fries.
Fries. Because it's attached to you and it lives forever and you only have one.
Now I'm terrified. Okay, Vana.
So I go back to, you had a really nice slide on the sort of the life cycle of data, the data life cycle. And I think in Africa and many emerging markets probably you have just the beginning of the collection phase. So I just remembered that we have a portfolio company called Smile Identity. That's actually, it reminds me because of the slide you had about this sort of AI being able to detect faces. And so this company is building identity. I know I mentioned how identity is a barrier to scale for some of these data companies outside of Kenya where they have a national ID. Well, there's a company that's addressing that in Tanzania and other countries where they're training AI tools to identify African faces because that's never been done before.
Right.
And this will be used as identity. So I think on the collection side, there's an opportunity to actually get ahead of it and start to kind of, but also inform government. I'm really now becoming very concerned that some of these amazing companies, both social good as well as just pure capitalistic, in Africa, in fintech lending, et cetera, are going to hit walls because governments are starting to quickly understand that data is the new oil, and they're starting to put regulations very, very fast, like Tanzania and others. I know Nigeria's working on it. So I think informing, educating government, and also allowing individuals to really handle their own data, because that's not really something Africans even expect. There are no privacy laws in many countries.
Right. Well, these are very modest calls to action. I think everybody in this room and watching online can take them on. So thank you all to the audience here. Thank you to our panelists. Have a great conference.